Investors need you. There's the feeling that fundraising is for other people, tech founders, people with MBAs who talk a certain way, people who look a certain way in a room. Capital buys you speed. And in this market, speed is not neutral, it is essential. It's not a bad thing for me to want to be rich. Time is money, and money buys you time. Hi, my name is Adenike, and this is Everything Funding, a series where I'm teaching women everything they need to know in order to successfully raise capital for their businesses. I'm an investor who has deployed over $10 million into more than 50 startups. I started this series because I'm tired of seeing women unable to raise the capital that they need. If you're currently fundraising or thinking about it, then you're in the right place. Let's get into it. If you're building a beauty brand, a food business, a fashion label, a wellness brand, or selling a product, and you have been bootstrapping it, using your personal funds to grow the business and reinvesting the money you make back into the business, and you're starting to wonder if it's time to do something different, or if you already tried to raise funding, got told no, and then went back to doing things yourself because at least that first felt like something you could control. Or if you have just decided that you are never raising funding because you are scared investors will take your company away from you, then this video is for you. Let's talk about Sarah Blakely, the OG girl boss. I love Sarah. I love Spanx. She built something that didn't exist. She's the name that always comes up. She's the woman who built something from nothing. She started Spanx with $5,000 of her own money, sold door to door, and grew her products through word of mouth. She's the iconic bootstrap story, the example that we all get should. And I think a lot of women, consciously or unconsciously, have built their entire idea of what is possible around her story and stories that sound like hers. This idea that bootstrapping is the only safe path to scale. Sarah invented Spanx, something that literally did not exist, but solved a problem women all over the world faced every day. She had minimal competition because she pioneered a whole category. The world was also just different. This was the late 90s slash early 2000s. Instagram did not exist, so nobody expected her to have 100,000 followers before she could pitch her brand. She got into Neiman Marcus early and did $4 million in revenue in her first year of operations. Her product was that good. And then Oprah put her on the favorite things list. Oprah, the original influencer. Products that made that list usually went viral, or at least viral for the time. She did around 10 million in sales after Oprah. Sarah never really had the conventional small business phase. She went from zero to scale almost immediately. And even Sarah, who did all of that and bootstrapped for the longest time, eventually took external capital from Blackstone in 2021, valuing her company at $1.2 billion. Dollars. Because at a certain point, every great business does. Before Spanx became a huge success, before Neiman Marcus, before Oprah, before any of it, Sarah went to investors. She tried. She pitched her idea to people with money and asked them to back her. And they said no. She bootstrapped because she had no other option. Not because she had a philosophy about it, but because the door was closed. So even the woman we hold up as the ultimate bootstrap icon, she was trying to raise capital when she started and couldn't. She built anyway and she won. But let's not pretend she chose this path really. She took the only path that was really available to her. Does that sound familiar? Sarah's story is real. It's just not repeatable or scalable. You probably already know that, which is why you're here watching this video. So, to bootstrap or not to bootstrap? That is the question. The question isn't whether or not to bootstrap. The question is, what is it actually costing you to keep bootstrapping? There's a point where bootstrapping stops working in your favor. Let's talk about what that looks like. But before I go on, let me make this clear. I'm not here to tell you bootstrapping is wrong. It's not. For many women starting out, it's the first and most accessible option. Maybe when you started, you had an idea you wanted to test. Maybe you didn't even know you could raise capital. Maybe you thought fundraising was for businesses with millions already in revenue. Maybe nobody in your life understood what you were building. Maybe the idea of asking a stranger for money felt daunting or impossible. Whatever the case, bootstrapping made sense at the time. It was the right first step. It helped you grow, validate the idea, and figure out what you were capable of. And it worked. That's not the argument. But there's an inflection point. And I want to give you something concrete so that you can figure out whether you are there right now. But let's pause for a bit. Before I get into the inflection point, I also want to say something that most people in this space won't say. If your goal is to build a profitable company, have a small, tight team, make good money, keep it sustainable, bootstrapping can absolutely get you there. That is a completely legitimate thing to build. Nobody should make you feel like your business is less serious or less worthy because it doesn't have venture capital or private equity money behind it. That framing is wrong, and I'm not here to reinforce that. I'm talking to a specific woman in this series. I'm talking to the woman who wants to dominate her category, who wants her brand to be the household name in her space globally, not just locally, who wants to build something worth hundreds of millions, eventually billions, who looks at the consumer companies that have done it and thinks, that is what I'm building. If that is you, and you will know if it is, then bootstrapping alone will not get you there at the speed the market requires. Not because you're not capable, but because the game changes at that level and the tools also change with it. I also want to say something else because I know that some of you didn't stay bootstrapping entirely by choice. You know you want to scale. You've known for years and you tried to raise. You went to the meetings, you sent the emails, you sat in the rooms, and you kept hearing no, or worse, you kept hearing nothing. And at some point, you stopped trying. Not because you gave up on the vision, but because the rejection was expensive. It was emotionally costly and practically costly in time you didn't have. That's not personal failure. It's the unfortunate reality that a lot of female founders face. The system that allocates capital was not designed with you in mind. It was built by people who look a certain way, who fund people who look a certain way, who understand markets that they themselves inhabit. For example, if you are a Black woman building a beauty brand for a customer they have never been, getting through that door is genuinely harder. It's not a mindset problem, it's an actual barrier, it's structural. What the series is going to do is give you every tool available to navigate that barrier. I'm not just going to pretend that it doesn't exist, and I won't tell you to just be more confident or pitch better, but I'll give you the real picture, who the right investors actually are, how to find them, how to speak to them, how to protect yourself when you do, so that the barrier becomes something you can work around, even when you can't knock it down entirely. So, if you are that woman, the one who wants to dominate her category, here is how you know you've hit the point where bootstrapping stops serving you. You have more demand than you can actually meet. People want your products. You keep running out. You can see the sales you are losing because you cannot produce fast enough, or you have a hire you need, someone who will completely change your capacity. But because you cannot bring them in because you cannot afford them yet. So you keep doing that thing yourself, late at night, in between everything else. Or a competitor is moving into your space. You can see it happening. They are not better than you, they just have more money to move faster than you can right now. Or you've been offered an opportunity, a stockist, a partnership, a new market that you cannot say yes to because you don't have the capital to service it properly. You can see exactly where you're going. The destination is clear. You just can't see a way to get there at any meaningful speed without something changing. If any of those things that I've just said feel familiar, then you are at the inflection point. And here's the thing I need you to understand before we go any further. External capital does not change your destination. It compresses the time it takes you to get there. This is what happens when you don't compress it. There are costs to bootstrapping that most people never sit down and add up. The first one is time. Time is money, and money buys you time. You'll get where you're going eventually, but slowly. Every year you spend grinding towards scale is a year someone else is moving faster. The market doesn't wait. The second one is wealth. This is the one women shy away from the most, and I want to address it. Nobody builds a business for purely altruistic reasons. You're building this to make money. I know your business is changing the world, but in the process, it should make you wealthy. That is not a bad thing to want. In fact, say it out loud. Say it out loud. It's not a bad thing for me to want to be rich. That's something you have to get comfortable saying. When you bootstrap, you never take anything off the table. You might take a salary, but everything else lives inside the company. You keep reinvesting your profits. So, one bad quarter, one supply chain crisis, one pandemic, and suddenly everything is at risk. Also, sometimes you never actually get to find out what your business is worth because nobody ever puts a real number on it. The third one is scale. This is the one I think about the most. Bootstrapping can keep you in small business mode almost indefinitely. Not because your business is not good enough, but because the model keeps you there. You keep pouring everything you make back into the business. Even if you got 500,000 orders tomorrow, you might not be able to fulfill them because you don't have the capacity. So you keep growing slowly, year after year, even when the demand is there. This is part of why we don't have many large scale consumer companies owned by women. Not because we can't build them, but because the path most of us take bootstrap, stay cautious, maintain control, don't ask. It doesn't create the conditions for that kind of growth. We don't have the funds to run large experiments. The fourth one is competition. Look, while you're figuring it out slowly, someone with capital can pick up your product, reverse engineer it, and I'll distribute you within 18 months. Capital buys you speed. And in this market, speed is not neutral, it is essential. Now that you know what the true cost of bootstrapping are, let's talk about what raising the right capital actually makes possible. It's easy to fixate on what you might lose when you raise capital. I want to talk about what you actually gain, not just the money, but what the money makes possible. Think about the thing that you've been putting off, the one that keeps coming back. Maybe it's the senior hire, the person who will take a whole function off your plate and own it. The thing you've been doing yourself late at night, in between everything else. That person exists. You just haven't been able to bring them in because you don't have the money. Maybe it's the new market you've been watching for 2 years. You know the demand is there. You know your product fit. You just haven't had the capital to go in properly. Maybe it's the campaign you've already run in your head 1,000 times. You know it would work. You just don't have the budget to do it the way it needs to be done. Or maybe it's simpler than all of that. Maybe you just want to stop running the business and actually lead it. Be strategic. Make decisions from the front instead of constantly being in the weeds of things that someone else should be doing. Eventually, it's the ability to take something off the table, build real, tangible wealth that exists outside the company so that your financial future is not entirely dependent on everything going exactly as planned. That is what we are actually talking about. Not giving your business away, but building something bigger than you can actually build alone with the right partner in it with you. Hold that picture. Everything in this series is in service of getting you there. Now, the fears, because they are real, and some of them are yours specifically, not generic founder fears, yours. Let's name them properly. The fear around raising capital is not just one thing, it's several things stacked on top of each other. And for women building the kind of businesses we're talking about, consumer brands, culturally rooted brands, some of those fears are very particular. There's the feeling that fundraising is for other people, tech founders, people with MBAs, people who went to the right schools, who talk a certain way, who have worked in finance or consulting, who know the right people, people who look a certain way in a room. You've been in those rooms, you already know what I'm talking about. There's the fear that the investor across the table will never understand your product because they've never used it and they are not your customer. They don't know your market because they've never had to. And when they tell you the market is not big enough, you know that it's not true, but you don't yet have the language to prove it. That's not a gap in your business. That's a gap in your toolkit, and it is one we are going to close together. There's also the feeling that asking for money means admitting your business cannot stand on its own. There's the fear of being told no. And honestly, you've probably already been told no. Maybe more than once. Maybe you pitched and it went nowhere and you retreated back into building because at least building feels like something you can control. I hear that. That is a completely rational response to a system that was not set up to give you a fair hearing. And then there's the control fear. The idea that taking investment means handing over the keys. And this one is not irrational because you've seen it happen. You know someone who lost their company. You've read the stories. You've watched women get pushed out of the things that they built. And you've decided, not me. I'd rather build slowly than risk that. I'm making a full video on each one of those fears because each one deserves a real answer, not just a, brief summary. But here's what I want you to sit with right now. Every single one of those fears lives in the same place. All familiarity with a system you were never taught. A system that, let's be honest, was not built with you in mind. That's it. It's not your business. It's not your ability. It's not your skills. You've already proven that you can build something. You've bootstrapped it this far. You're doing it. The fear is a knowledge gap. And that is exactly why I am here. Now, I want you to pay close attention to the next things I'm about to say because most people have the power dynamic in fundraising completely backwards. Investors need you. Yes, they do. The feeling that capital is scarce, that there isn't enough, that it's all going to other people, that it's in some closed room you haven't been invited into. I need you to hear this. That feeling is not accurate. Right now, globally, there's over $4.6 trillion in private capital ready to be deployed. VC funds alone are sitting on over $650 billion. In Europe, 31 billion is specifically for the early stage companies. In the US, 307 billion is waiting on the sidelines. I've sat in these rooms. I've been on the investor side of the table. I've been the person deciding where the money goes. And I can tell you that fund managers have one job: find great companies to invest in. If they don't deploy, they don't make money and they can't raise the next fund. And then they don't have a career. The money that they've been given cannot just sit there. That's just venture capital. There are family offices, angel investors, thousands of investors actually globally who are actively looking for consumer opportunities. You have angels, syndicates, corporate venture arms, impact funds. The landscape is enormous. Investors are not doing you a favor when they invest in you. They need you as much as you need them. They are actively looking for the exact type of business that you are building. The problem has never been that capital does not exist. The problem is that women building these businesses, your businesses, have never been taught how to access it. They've never been really taught how to tell the story in a language investors respond to. They've never been taught how to find the right investors, the one who actually understands culturally rooted consumer brands, instead of walking into rooms full of people who will never get it and wondering why they keep hearing no. That's the gap. And over the next 30 videos, that's what we're closing together. Three things I want you to live with today. Number one, bootstrapping is not a bad thing and it's not a character flaw, but it's also not a permanent strategy. It's a phase. And you now have the signals to diagnose whether you've hit the inflection point, whether bootstrapping is starting to work against you instead of for you. Number two, the fears are real, every single one of them. And some of them are specifically yours because of what you're building, what you look like, and the rooms you've been sitting in. But they live in unfamiliarity. This is a system you can learn, you can understand it, you can work within it and get what you want from it if you know the game. Number three, capital is not scarce, it is enormous. Fund managers are actively looking. The power dynamic is more balanced than you have been told. You just need to know how to find the right people and speak their language. Here's the question I want you to sit with before the next video. If capital isn't the problem, why are women still getting so little funding? For example, in the past decade, only 2% of VC funding has gone to women. 2%. 2% of total venture funding. Not because the businesses aren't good enough. There's another reason, a structural one. And once you understand it clearly, it stops being something that happens to you and starts being something you can actually navigate. We're going to cover that next. This series is 30 videos. Every video builds on the one before. If you have not already subscribed, do it now. You don't want to miss one of these. And if you know someone who is building, who is struggling with this, who has been told no and doesn't know why, send this to them. This is what I built it for. I'll see you in the next video.